Listen to The Telltale Heart by Edgar Allan Poe, Level A2.
It is true. I was nervous then and I am nervous now. But how can you say that I am crazy? My illness has made my senses sharp, especially my sense of hearing. I could hear everything in the sky and underground. I am not crazy. Listen to my story and see how calmly I can tell it. How did the idea appear in my brain? It is impossible to say, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. I had no purpose. I loved the old man. He never was bad to me. I didn't want to steal his gold, but his eye scared me. Yes, one of his eyes looked like the eye of a terrible wild bird. It was light blue and round. When he looked at me, my blood turned cold. Finally, I decided to take the old man's life and destroy the awful eye forever. You think I am crazy. Crazy men know nothing. But believe me, I acted so smartly and carefully. Before I killed him, I was very kind to the old man. One night I came into his room. The old man was lying on his bed. Ha! I was very careful. A crazy man could never be so smart. I turned the lamp on, just a little. I did it very slowly. A single thin ray of light fell on the awful eye. Since then, I came to his room every night. But the eye was always closed, so it was impossible to kill the old man. I wasn't afraid of him. I was afraid of the awful eye. Every morning I came into his room and talked to him. I called him by his name and asked, "Did you sleep well last night?" A week passed. On the 8th night, I opened the door even more carefully than usual. That night, I was sure about my powers. I thought to myself, I am here, opening his door little by little, and he doesn't even dream about my secret actions. This idea made me laugh. And perhaps he heard me. Suddenly, he moved on the bed. Now you may think that I turned back. But no, his room was as black as the night. The old man was afraid of robbers and shut his windows. I knew that he couldn't see the door moving. I kept pushing it slowly. When I finally entered, I made a small noise. The old man jumped up in the bed and cried, "Who is there?" I kept quiet and didn't move for a whole hour. But he didn't lie down either. He was sitting up in bed and listening. Suddenly I heard a quiet groan. I knew it was the groan of deadly fear. He kept saying to himself, "It is just the wind. It is only a mouse crossing the floor." But he knew that death was near. I turned on my lamp a little. A thin ray of light fell on the awful eye. It was open, wide open, and I became angry at once. I saw it perfectly clear, and I could see nothing else of the old man's face. Have I not told you that my senses were extremely sharp? At that moment, I heard a low, quick sound. I knew that sound well, too. It was the old man's heart beating. It made me feel even angrier. But I held back. I kept quiet and held my lamp. I fixed the ray of light on the awful blue eye. The beating of the heart grew quicker and louder every moment. The old man's fear was extreme. It was the dead hour of the night. The room was completely dark, and I was scared to death by this noise. For a few minutes, I could stand quietly, but the beating grew louder. I thought the heart must break into small pieces. Then I suddenly thought, what if a neighbor hears it? And then, the old man's hour has come. I cried loudly and jumped forward. He let out a cry. I threw him down to the floor and pulled the heavy bed over him. When he was dead, I smiled happily. For many minutes, the heart kept beating, but I didn't worry about it. The neighbors couldn't hear anything through the wall. Sometime later, the heart stopped. I removed the bed and studied the body. I put my hand on his heart and held it there for many minutes. There was no beating. He was dead. His eye will never be my problem again, I thought. If you still think that I am crazy, you will not think that anymore. After that, I had to hide the body. I acted quickly. First of all, I cut off the head and the arms and the legs. Then I took up 3 boards from the wooden floor. I put the body parts in the holes. Then I replaced the boards carefully. No human eye, not even his, could find anything wrong. There was no sign of blood anywhere. I have taken care of it well, too. I finished at 4 o'clock in the morning. The city bell rang 4 times. Just then, somebody knocked on the street door. I went down to open it with a light heart. There was nothing to be afraid of. 3 police officers entered the room and introduced themselves. "People have heard someone shouting during the night. We are checking the houses," they said. I smiled. There was nothing to be afraid of. I kindly welcomed the gentleman. "I shouted at night," I said, "and I also mentioned the old man. He has left the country." I took my visitors all over the house. I asked them to check everything well. In the end, I led them to his bedroom. "As you see, no one has taken his gold," I told them. Then I brought chairs into the room and offered them to rest. I put my chair in the most dangerous spot where the dead old man lay hidden. The officers didn't notice anything. My manner was very informal and I answered their questions easily. Soon they were chatting about common things. Suddenly I felt sick. My face turned pale. I got a headache and I noticed a ringing in my ears. I tried to talk, but the ringing didn't stop. I talked louder, but the sound became louder too. It was a low, quick sound. I felt like there was no air in the room, but the officers heard nothing. I talked even louder and more quickly. However, the noise grew louder as well. I jumped out of my chair and started talking in a very loud voice. I waved my arms in the air and moved actively, but the noise grew stronger. Why don't the officers leave? I thought. I stepped on the floor with my feet, but the noise grew louder and louder. Oh God, what could I do? I held my chair and pulled it across the floor, but the noise grew louder, louder, louder. The men continued chatting and smiling nicely. Is it possible that they don't hear? No. They hear. They know. They are making fun of me, I was thinking. But I couldn't stand it anymore. I felt that I must shout or die, louder, louder, louder. It was me, I shouted. I have killed him. Take off the boards. Here. It is the beating of his awful heart.
Get more stories in the Ewa app. Read, listen to the audiobooks of different genres, learn new words in one click, improve your English with Ewa. Check out appewa.com.
Don't forget to subscribe. It's just one click, and this way you won't miss our new English audiobooks. And now, listen to another great story.